this is your guys' podcast has got a great following. Q getting invited to go to McLaren. Thank you, Davey. But
Thanks, Davi.
does everyone know how this relationship started? I don't think so. How did it start?
Maybe not, eh?
Maybe not.
Like let's turn back the time.
Let's try and do that. It's going to be difficult. In fact, the Instagram, I was scrolling back the other day to see when we got our dog. The dog's poorly at the moment. So I was just looking when we got our dog, and I found the Instagram that I put up of Olly being a guest on what was originally the Hook It podcast.
Yeah.
And it was 2015.
There you go.
When he first came on the Hook It. That's the one I got invited on as
Yeah,
well.
that was the
way
original.
later.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
The original
so
mountain bike
maybe,
podcast.
yeah, the original Hook It podcast.
The original mountain bike podcast.
The original mountain bike podcast, some might say.
Some might
And
say.
Would be
I'd
true
say
if they
as
do
well.
say it. Yeah, it was the original.
What format was it in when...
Braille.
Hey, he's already gone to host. He's already gone back to host.
Sorry.
Hey? Did you see that?
All right, watch. Look how lazy I
Did
am.
you see that? Good question, though.
Anything.
What
Barely
format
opened
was it
my
in?
eyes.
Great question. No, you can keep.
Yeah, it was obviously
questions.
then, it was just audio. Like, yeah, totally just audio. And we did a virtual episode together. I remember where I still lived at my parents' house. I remember I did it in what was my mum's office at the time. And yeah, that was kind of, I wouldn't say it's how this started, but we didn't know each other at all. Like, obviously, Olly was a guest because I was a fan.
That was a normal episode, like Hook It,
Yeah.
thinking, but then...
Yeah, I was trying to be bi-weekly back then. So it was every other week.
Okay.
And I would have random guests from... I think back then it was probably a bit more diverse too, because I'd had like some health and fitness people on, different sports, BMX, moto, and mountain bike. So it was a bit all over the place. But that was probably purely because it was harder to get guests, because being honest, it was like a lot of people didn't know what a podcast was. I always use the example of Ryan Nyquist, who had absolutely no idea what he was doing, bless him. Like zero clue. He agreed to do it through DMs, which was insane anyway. And then he's like, okay, this time. And I sent him the link to go on what was then a Skype call. Sent him a Skype link. There he is. Like, doesn't put his video on, which is fine. But obviously, doing podcasts, it's kind of easy if you can see someone.
Definitely.
You can see the reaction.
Especially virtually, you need the video.
And I remember being like, hey, man, like, I'm just going to hit record. Like, we're probably going to go, And he's like, how long will it be? And I was like, probably like an hour or something like that. And he's like, oh, I'm just driving back from the airport. Will that be okay? And I was just like, yeah, like, cool. And he just drove home from the airport and we did a podcast, and I've never listened back to it because it was probably awful. But yeah, that was what it was back then, man. It was really different. But it was harder to get guests because so many people. And I remember actually, like, Olly was one of the first really that we had a mutual love of podcasts, if that made sense. Because
I think that's what you need in the beginning, hey?
Yeah.
Because I also loved podcasts for a long time. So.
Yeah. I remember we had like a mutual love of a certain podcast.
Yeah, and that's how we kept in touch,
like,
wasn't it?
Interesting. Like,
after you recorded the
I think
guest one with him.
Yeah.
No one liked podcasts then.
It felt like they didn't. It definitely felt like it.
No one knew what they were.
No.
Absolutely, yeah. I only knew because my brothers introduced me to...
Really, yeah.
Yeah,
like Rogan. And,
comedians.
And that's how I found it.
And Tim Ferriss was big back.
Tim Ferriss
business,
was
he was
then.
big. He was like, he was called kind of the Oprah of podcasting.
Yeah.
He was kind of put it on the map.
So I discovered it just from like driving a lot. I had a company before the Hook It thing doing camper vans in Poland. So I'd drive from England to Poland, then to Sweden, to Norway, all over. So I was always driving, and I don't know how I first found podcasts, but you're driving around like listening to European radio, and it was just awful, and you couldn't find stuff. And then discovered that you could just, at the time, like most cars didn't even have like USB connections and stuff. So headphones, just driving through Europe, just listening to Rogan and Fighter and the Kid and stuff like that. And it was from there that I was like, oh, I'd like to do something, but I just needed to like figure out why. Does that make sense? So yeah, then started a distribution company, needed a way of marketing it. Boom.
And always a passion in mountain biking. Like you had that on... Like how did that come about?
Not really, if I'm honest. Yeah, just been brutally honest. Like I started a distribution company in originally to be a motocross distribution company. So I was talking to Zinc about Sensor Scripts. So at the time, Sensors were going to bring out a moto version of what was then the This Is the Boss, or I can't remember what it's called now. Swayze. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, well done. Appreciate that. I thought you were going for Knuckles, but you didn't. But we'll take it anyway. We'll have it anyway. So yeah, they were going to come out with this Sensor Grip, and we were in talks about that. Then the Moto Grip never happened, and then Zinc was like, "Hey, why don't you just do the grips, like Sensor Grips?" And then that's how Hook It started. Literally started off the back of that. Like,
that's so cool.
Yeah,
I love those like random things.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do this, and then you
placed our first order. My first order at the time, it was just me. In fact, no, Ol might have been with me, my other business partner at Hook It. Yeah, we placed our order. He gave us 30 days for terms because I had no money, and that started Hook It, which became a distribution company, and still is. Like, it's still doing its thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then
to fast forward, so I went on the podcast, and then it was probably COVID time before
could
or
have
after.
been. Yeah.
And then I feel like you had Olly again, but correct me if I'm wrong. And then you just saw something with him of like, hey, he's really good on these interviews, and you guys did like the companions through COVID or something.
Yeah, lockdown. I think
which was the initial start of this, which is now Ride Companion.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember
did daily ones or weekly ones?
We did our first ever episode, which was just me and Olly, like, you know, back to living at my parents'. Then you came back from Rampage once, and I was like, oh, I was down here because I was on the road with Hook It doing like sales visits and stuff. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be down south. Let's just sit and record. So we did. We just did an in-person with a Rodecaster Pro, whatever it's called. So we did one in your flat.
Yeah.
And then from that, I guess we were just like, oh, that was fun. Like, there's something here. I don't know what it is, but there's like something. And then we go into lockdown. And I just sent Olly a message like, yo, people are going to be bored. Let's just do something. And
mate, it was...
and the rest is history.
Dude,
I was listening to some of those because, I mean...
there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
And well, there's only so much Rogan and other podcasts, and you got this great rapport, and it was funny.
Mate, I loved
you were getting
those
different
episodes.
guests on.
Yeah,
and we had so
good.
much time at that point to just sort of, like, sound super lame, but like be creative and like find things that you're interested in and just explore like stuff literally on your doorstep.
Yeah.
It felt like there was so much to talk about. We didn't run out.
Never. And we'd always come
even
into
though
it.
it's like meant to be the most boring time ever.
Yeah, but we'd always come into it and be like, you got anything to talk about? Nah, not really. Hit record, boom. It was like just
you guys had some
chat
random tangents.
Yeah, we had random guests. But I think as well what was happening is like podcasting in general was growing through that time, through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like it accelerated. And then this went from being like virtual and no video to then like, okay, like maybe we should do some more video stuff. And then we increased how good that looked. Like it went from being a shitty Skype call in 420 or whatever it was. Like it was so bad. Sound quality is awful. And then it was like, oh, maybe I'll get a better microphone. And it just sort of expanded from there.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how where it starts and where it's got to now. Now you guys do it only really in person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which brings its own challenges, you know.
It does.
Because you're down south of England.
Yeah.
Is that the biggest? Yeah. I mean, that to me is probably one of my biggest challenges in podcasts. Is like just the admin around getting the guests. Conversation's great. Love prepping.
Yeah.
What's a big challenge for you guys? Like, because you're established now, really cool following in UK. Like UK, I can see the numbers on YouTube.
Yeah.
Even
it's
audio,
growing,
like
sure.
it's definitely growing, and there's a big mountain bike fan base here.
Yeah. Obviously getting guests is a little bit harder these days, but it's so much more valuable if you do get them. And I feel like speaking to guests and speaking to recently like a lot of managers of certain guests that are coming on and stuff like that, and you'll know this from doing yours, like it's gone from being this like fringe thing that people didn't really get to being this like, okay, that's actually a legitimate media platform where you can go and promote things or you can just get your story out. And I think that's, you know, it's not news to people that telling athlete stories is just sick. Like you watch these people on TV and you don't really know who they are. And podcast is like that avenue. So yeah, it's definitely getting to a point now where I think some people are more open to come down. We've had a few recently that have driven from or flown down, you know what I mean? So I think it's getting easier for sure. Like it just takes time, doesn't it? It's like, you know, we've got a guest coming up soon that we've been going back and forth for months.
Yeah, people don't know that. Eh? They just
Like
click on the
months.
episode.
Yeah, it's like, okay, they got that guy on. It's like, no, it's been like months of trying to figure out if they're this way or whatever. And in all honesty, like, it's been cool to be able to help some guests come down, if that makes sense. Because I think, you know, I guess when you have a guest, people probably don't know this, but like, you don't get paid to be a guest. But if you can help with like some expenses and a hotel, and like that to me has always been like the bit of a dream to be able to do that and like provide more of like an experience, which I guess is something that in the long term we're kind of working more towards. It's like we want guests to come and have like a day, 2 days, go riding, coffee shop, gym, make more content
have the
around
Surrey
like,
experience.
Yeah, dude, just farm content from it wherever it is, whatever it is. Like have all these like segments and stuff. That was what we were desperate for, wasn't it, when we first started doing it in person. I think like lockdown was very cool because you had like a receptive audience, and that goes also for the guests. So we had banger guests through lockdown, didn't we?
Yeah,
banger guests, dude. Like, and there was no pressure on having guests the whole time. Like, I definitely feel like we feel the pressure more now.
Yeah,
in person to provide guests.
It's
like,
cool because we've got that old school following, like the older following that just love a random.
Yeah, barely bike chat.
Yeah.
Right.
dude, yeah.
And that seems to be quite apparent sometimes when you put an episode up and they do way better than like a big guest, and you're like, oh, interesting. Which is kind of cool. I don't really look into it that much personally. Like, I don't know why.
That is interesting, though.
But people love just a random... And I like that, though. Like, that's what I always think.
That's
like,
what I listen to as
That's
well,
exactly
personally.
what I listen to. Just a bit of mumbling and, like, you know, I like a really chilled episode.
Yeah.
Where you don't know where it's going. Whereas I think when you have a guest and it's like a walkthrough of their career, it's a bit of a different vibe.
Well, I mean, if you decide to go that route, you guys are good to maybe go down tangents or challenge a guest, like, you know.
I think you want to
feel the pressure? Sorry, do you feel the pressure to maybe stick to a bit more structure when you've got this big guest instead of going a little bit more niche and off topic?
I think you want to do them justice, don't you?
Yeah.
I think you want to like put someone across the best way you can. So that I wouldn't have said it's pressure. Other than that, it's like,
yeah, I agree.
what I always think is I don't want to not ask the question.
Yeah.
If I forget, you know, like even we just recorded an episode available on the Ride Companion channel right now with you, and I like only going through the episode, I was like, Needles rode the full line at Darkfest. Like, that's something people are interested in. And like, if I missed that, it would annoy me. It would be like I was...
Yeah, fair enough.
You know, I wasn't paying attention. Like, you don't want to be that guy.
Maybe there's the core fan that goes, what do you mean you didn't ask that
Yeah.
topic? Yeah, no, I understand that.
I think that's cool when there's two of us. It
Yeah.
kind of works.
Yeah,
that
I mean,
way,
that
because
takes
you've
the
got
pressure
two
off. I would
different
love
brains
that
looking at it
sometimes.
different ways.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Don't get me wrong though, he's done some episodes which have been absolute like slayers on his own.
No, I mean, you
Yes.
both can.
But-
It's just,
Yeah.
but two heads is better than one, they say, you know.